Do I even need to say anything? Devils were 1 point away from clinching a playoff spot, and while they're going to get it, it just didn't happen against the Bruins. Nowhere close. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Scott Hockey Plug Play Announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. The New Jersey Devils lost to the Boston Bruins badly by a score of 7-2 inside the Prudential Center. It was WWE night inside the Rock, and the Devils got KO'd. Where do I begin? Jeez, I guess to start off today's episode, I'll share some statistical facts and also some of my main observations while watching the game. Then in the second segment, we will hear from head coach Sheldon Keefe because we need to hear what he has to say about the matter because the playoffs are right around the corner. You can't really afford to have these types of outings, especially against a Bruins team that's been struggling the last few weeks. In fact, they've been struggling all season long. That's why they no longer have Brad Marchand on their roster. Then in the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game episode recap, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. But I think we all know what letter grade I'm going to give the Devils, but stay tuned for that. All right. The Devils are 1 point away from securing a spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Have no fear. The Devils will see the postseason. It's all but certain. It's going to take all sorts of circumstances that are very, very, very unlikely to happen for the Devils not to clinch a playoff spot. So you might want to secure yourself some tickets, but it just wasn't going to happen against the Bruins. I guess it wasn't meant to be. The Bruins are now 9-1-1 in their previous 11 games against the Devils. Of all the teams in the NHL, no matter how good or bad, it seems like the Bruins give the Devils a lot of trouble. So if I had to compile a list of opponents that sometimes are a headache for the Devils to deal with, you best believe that the Bruins are going to be one of those teams in my top 5. But speaking of which, the Bruins were 1-10-1 since March 12th. I said that they were struggling, but that's an understatement. They've been horrendously bad. They've been eliminated from securing a spot in the playoffs for the first time since what, 2016? And here's an interesting fact. The Devils haven't won no more than 3 games in a row since January 14th, 2023. Mackenzie Blackwood was in net for that game. It's been a long time since the Devils have won more than 3 games in a row. It's just so frustrating because it's like they don't go on lengthy losing streaks, but they never go on a lengthy winning streak either. It seems like it's been forever since the Devils have won 5 games in a row. It seems like every time they win 3, that's it. It caps off right there. And I just had a horrible feeling that the Devils' luck was going to run out against the Bruins because I just couldn't help but think about, are the Devils actually going to win 4 games in a row for the first time since early 2023? Yes, it's been over 2 years since the Devils have won 4 games in a row, 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row. You name it. That is pathetic. But you know what? It can always be worse. Dallas allowed 3 goals to Vancouver within the final minute, and then Vancouver ended up winning the game in overtime. Did you guys check that game out? Just know there's always someone who has it worse than you. But getting back to the Devils, sometimes you just got to tip your hat to greatness. David Pastrnak, another 100-point season. Rachel Herzog talked about it in one of her hits. It's pretty incredible that Pastrnak is still capable of putting up these types of performances because the players around him aren't really all that good. Like Bill Spalding even brought up the fact that there's really only one line that generates a lot of offense for the Bruins, and Pastrnak had a multi-point performance. Prior to Jakub Lauko's goal in the second period, Pastrnak had a hand in the 13 prior goals scored by the Bruins. In the first period, he got the first goal of the game. Jesper Bratt coughed up the puck. That cannot happen. And then he got the secondary assist on Michael Callahan's goal, which was his first career goal. I'm going to circle back to that in a minute, but good outing by Pastrnak. Like I said, sometimes you just got to tip your hat to greatness. Pastrnak is one of the best players in the NHL right now, and he put on a show. He got the Bruins off and running strong in the first period. But focusing on the Devils, here are some things I just noticed while watching the game. It seemed like the Devils came out with no energy. I get that they're not a good first period team, but you really got to change that come playoff time because getting off to a good start is vital, especially if you want to be a legitimate playoff team. I think that's quite obvious if you ask me. Even if you don't score a goal, you got to come out with some sort of energy, and the Devils didn't really do that. I think they started to hunker down a little bit as the first period started to wane on, but you got to come out the gate strong, and you cannot underestimate your opponent. And going back to what I just said moments ago, they did not handle the puck all that well. I think two prime examples would have to be Jesper Bratt and Luke Hughes. I hate to just call those two players out, but I just have to bring this into the light. Let me make this perfectly clear. It was not a good collective team effort from the Devils, but let me just highlight a few particular plays. The first goal of the game that I just mentioned that was scored by David Pastrnak, Jesper Bratt had a bad pass, and the MSG crew highlighted that, saying that Bratt is better than that. Or the goals surrendered to Lauko and Koepke. Luke Hughes sort of had a hand in it, particularly with the Koepke goal, because as soon as he scored it, you saw Luke just go to the bench and slam his stick in frustration because he knows he's better than that. You can't have those types of mental lapses. And it seemed like that the game progressively got worse for the Devils. Now, to their credit, they did answer back in the second period. Usually they do have a good performance in the second period after a slow first period. So Lauko gets the third goal of the game for the Bruins, but not too long after, Stefan Noesen, great net front presence and a great setup by Daniel Sprong. I've been rather impressed with Sprong's play the last few outings, but Noesen puts the Devils on the board 3-1. It was a delayed penalty to the Bruins, so the Devils were able to get the extra attacker out and they capitalized on it. And then not too long after Noesen's goal, Meyer scored off of a shot from Eric Haula. Once again, Timo time comes up big, and Haula continues to see his name in the score sheet more often as the season progresses. The Devils cut it to a 1-goal deficit, but they gave the momentum right back. Middlestead, he scored within the final minute of the second period, and right then and there, I knew that the Devils were screwed. Bruins head into the final intermission with a 2-goal lead, and they did not look back. They scored 3 more goals in the third period, and before you knew it, the Devils surrendered a touchdown and an extra point. Jacob Markstrom, I've been raving about his last few performances. This was not a good outing. Expected goals against, 1.699. He surrendered 7 goals. Goals saved above expected rate was minus 5.3. Horrendously bad outing for Markstrom. And going back to the Middlestead goal, I know it took a funny hop off the stick of Casey, but it was such a soft goal. Markstrom makes those saves in his sleep. Middlestead just floated it on in and somehow, some way, it found the back of the net. That cannot happen. Or in the first period, Callahan, he scored his first career goal in the NHL. I think he only had a few goals in the AHL. I think he only had one in 40 AHL games played this year. And here he is in the NHL scoring his first goal against the Devils. It was just a bad outing through and through for New Jersey. I think that's safe to say. I don't think you need me to explain in any further detail. Not a good outing, and I'm running out of words how to describe it. Okay, we're going to hear from Sheldon Keefe momentarily, but before we continue, let me tell you guys about Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Okay, let's hear from head coach Sheldon Keefe shortly after the Devils' crushing defeat against the Bruins, in which they allowed a touchdown and an extra point. Take a listen.
Well, you dug yourself a hole, but you fight back to get the 2 goals. But I guess it wasn't enough to maintain, right?
Yeah, not even close.
What can you take out of tonight into the next practice and hope that you get?
Nothing. I can't take anything from tonight except for another just reminder that, when we don't lead with our competitiveness and our pace of play and our structure, we're just not very good. So it's another reminder of that. That's it. That's all I take away from it. You guys can break it down all you want. I'm not going to watch it, and I'm not going to talk about it after I leave this room. We're just going to press on and get ready for the next one.
Did it surprise you?
Very much so, yeah. It's disappointing, but it's obviously I share in it too. So I think I didn't do the job to get the group ready today. It was very evident from the first shift that we were just not ready today.
Brett explained you've already told him next practice is going to be a hard day of battles. What are you expecting on Friday?
We'll work. We'll compete. We've played well. We've practiced hard. We've practiced well. We've got 2 days here before we play again. It's scheduled day off for us, given it's a very busy. It's been a very light schedule, probably a little bit too late. That was evident here today. Just our second game, and I don't know how many days it's been here now, but it's going to get busy on us. So reluctantly, we're going to take the day off tomorrow, but we'll respond accordingly in our next practice. Not a punishment or anything like that. It's just evident that we have to be at a very high level to give ourselves a chance to win against anybody. So we got to get right back to that.
What's your overall takeaway on Luke Hughes' increased role against maybe some of the toughest matchups he's had in his career so far?
Nobody was any good today.
Do you think there's a mental factor to trying to push a win streak to 4, or is it just execution-based coincidental?
Well, obviously, we've been unable to do it all season, so there's something there. To me, this isn't it. To me, this is... Listen, Ranger game's easy to get up for lots of reasons, right? This one's harder. This one's it's a little more internal. You gotta find ways to manufacture it and bring it. Here on a Tuesday night and all that. You gotta find a way, to Tuesday night against a team that's out of the playoffs and that we haven't seen for quite a while. And we didn't bring it. So that's, to me, yeah, there's the 4 games and all that stuff, but it's just to me, it's more about just our inability to just string it together, for a long period of time. That's been an issue for us all season. And, we talked about it this morning. It was a real good opportunity for us to push through a couple thresholds here, get to the playoffs and get to that fourth game, and clearly not there. So, like I said, we've already chatted about it a little bit. We'll respond to it again on Friday, but it'll be less about this game and more about just us moving forward and where we need to get to.
My main takeaways going into the Penguins game on Friday is that the Devils got to shake this off quickly. The playoffs are right around the corner, similar to what Sheldon said, similar to what some of the players also echoed. You don't really have time to feel sorry for yourselves. You got to dust it off quickly. And remember, all you need is just 1 point to secure your playoff spot. And I'm sure the Devils are going to get it. Just wasn't a good outing. To the Devils' credit, they've been playing a lot better. This was their first horrendously bad outing in a few weeks, and I think that sort of says something. I think the team is starting to turn a corner a little bit. Unfortunately, you have these sort of outings, but going back to what Kovacevic said just a couple weeks ago, now is the time to sort of have that playoff mentality, because how do you respond from it? That's what differentiates a regular season team and a playoff team. How do you bounce back from adversity? I think that's what the Devils need to continue to do, and don't underestimate your opponent. Nothing is for certain in this league, and unlike most sports, there's a lot of parity in hockey. And the Bruins, they just caught fire. They still have one of the best goalies in North America, I would argue, in Jeremy Swayman. They have one of the best players in the NHL right now in David Pastrnak. Similar to what Rachel Herzog said during her hit, it's still incredible that Pastrnak is able to put up these types of numbers despite the players that are currently surrounding him and how the season has been going for the Bruins. And I also got to give credit to the Bruins, because they called a timeout after the Devils captured some momentum. Once Timo Meier scored the second goal of the game for the Devils to cut the lead to 1 for the Bruins, they called a timeout to take the momentum away from the Devils and calm down their guys. I got to give a lot of credit, because that was really smart. And I wish Sheldon Keefe would sometimes do that, because calling a timeout, I know you only get one, can go a long way. And that was a perfect time to do so, because you don't want the Devils to shift the momentum back into their favor. And that was one of my main talking points in the first segment, which was once the Devils seemed to have that momentum, they immediately sacrificed it. And Ken Danikos brought this up on air, which is the possibility of switching up your lines a little bit. He acknowledged that Sheldon Keefe has been rocking with the same lines for the past few games, but maybe now's the time to give Shimon Nemitz another chance, Curtis Lazar another chance, Nathan Bashin another chance, just to shake things up a little bit, for the simple fact of just offering a new dynamic. Dano brought it up, just giving guys another chance to show themselves before the season concludes. The Devils are still in a good position. They just didn't have a good outing. Simple as that. All right. I'm going to compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsor jobs. Put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've actually used Indeed before to book myself some play-by-play gigs. I use it to this very day. Still get email notifications. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support my show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Okay, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and get out of here. I really don't want to do this, but I have to. Shots on goal differential, 25-21 in favor of the Bruins. Power plays, Bruins were 0 for 2, Devils were 0 for 1. Worth mentioning, once again, that Nason did score when there was an extra attacker out. It was a delayed penalty to the Bruins. Hits 24-15 in favor of the Devils. Giveaways 16 a pop. Takeaways 5-2 in favor of the Devils. Blocked shots 14-12 in favor of the Bruins. Time spent in the penalty box 4-2 in favor of the Devils. I highlighted a few players in the first segment. I talked about how Jacob Markstrom, probably one of his worst performances since returning from injury, and that's saying something. Jake Allen had to come in relief because it was ugly. It was really bad. Like the Bruins were up by a decent amount of goals, and there was some time remaining in the third period. It was hard to watch, and it got to a point where it was just like, why are we watching this game? Just turn it off. It's over. Probably one of the worst performances I've seen from the Devils in quite some time, just because of what was going into this game. They're just 1 point away from clinching a playoff spot. The Bruins were 1-10-1 since March 12th coming into this game. The Devils haven't won no more than 3 games in a row since early January 2023. I got to give the Devils an F. I just got to. It was there's nothing redeeming about this game. The only redeeming thing I could say is that it was over. Once triple zeros hit the board in the third period, that nightmare was over. Just put it to bed. The end. Try to redeem yourselves on Friday. That's my biggest thing. Have the memory of a goldfish, because the playoffs are right around the corner. You don't have time to feel sorry for yourselves. So that's where I'm going to settle with for the Devils for a time being. And I think a lot of you can agree with me in that regards. But let me know your thoughts. What did you think of this game against the Bruins? Did you stick by it till the very end? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.